Have you ever stopped, mid-sentence or maybe typing an email and just wondered, is this really the best word, the most precise one?
Oh, all the time.
Like, does obey actually mean the exact same thing as comply? Or is there maybe a subtle difference between calling something old versus obsolete that changes everything?
It's a great question.
Oh,
We often swap words around thinking they're the same, but those little nuances, they hold a lot of power.
exactly. We overlook them.
And in today's world, with so much information flying around, getting the language right is, well, it's crucial for understanding anything properly. Words aren't just sounds.
Right? They're like building blocks.
Precisely. Building blocks for meaning, for connection, and if those blocks are a bit off or put in the wrong place,
The whole thing gets shaky.
yeah, the whole structure of what you're trying to say can get wobbly. Misinterpretations happen easily.
Well, that's exactly why we're doing this today. We want you to join us for a deep dive into this fascinating world, synonyms, antonyms, all those subtle distinctions. Our guide is a classic dictionary of English, really a treasure trove. And our mission really is to unpack a specific set of words, mostly starting with O and P.
Sounds good.
We want to uncover those hidden meanings and see how understanding them can sharpen your communication, deepen your understanding, and honestly give you an edge.
And it's not just about, learning more words, though that's always good.
Right.
Think of it more like, well, like putting language under an X-ray. It's about getting genuinely well-informed by seeing the subtle power inside the words themselves.
I like that X-ray of language.
Yeah. It's about those aha moments when a word just clicks, and you suddenly see its unique flavor and how it shapes not just a sentence, but how we see the world, how we interact.
It's like a shortcut to getting better with language.
It really is. Linguistic mastery, maybe.
So what can you expect today? We'll explore words related to agreement and disagreement,
Compliance resistance.
clarity and confusion, persistence, change, even how we handle conflict with words. We're not just looking at what they mean, but why those subtle differences are so important in real life.
How they shift perceptions, clarify intent.
Or even stop misunderstandings before they start. So yeah, get ready for an exploration of that quiet power hiding right there in plain sight.
I look forward to it.
All right, let's jump into this first big theme then. We're starting by looking at how language helps us talk about really complex social stuff. Things like authority, compliance, opposition.
It's fundamental, isn't it?
It really is. We're going to unpack words that seem similar, maybe words you use interchangeably, but actually carry very different shades of meaning about willingness, intention, power.
The whole spectrum of submission and resistance.
Exactly, mapping that spectrum.
It's definitely a subtle landscape. Words like obedient and amenable, they get thrown around, but they point to really different ways someone might respond to, say, direction or influence.
Okay, so where do we start? Obedient.
Let's start there. Obedient? The core idea is compliance with demands, specifically from someone in authority.
Ah, the authority piece is key.
It is. The dictionary example is classic. Cadets must be obedient to their commanding officer.
Right, that immediately makes you think of, well, a formal structure, hierarchy.
Exactly.
It's not just choosing to agree. It's about duty or your role in a system. You have to be obedient, like the cadet example. It doesn't matter if you personally agree.
Precisely. And the antonyms really back that up. Disobedient, obviously, but also contumacious.
Contumacious, that sounds serious.
It is. It implies a really willful, defiant resistance to authority. Not just failing to obey, but actively refusing.
Okay, so that's obedience tied to authority. How does that compare to, say, docile?
Docile shifts the focus. It implies a predisposition, like an inherent character trait, to submit readily to control or guidance.
Oh, it's more about their nature.
Yes. The source gives the example. A docile child who never caused trouble. The emphasis is on the innate character, the temperament. It's less about a specific command and more about an inherent willingness, a pliability.
So a docile person isn't just following orders because they must, but because they're kind of agreeable by nature. Maybe they even prefer it.
That's a good way to put it. It could be an animal that's easy to train or a student who just naturally accepts instruction.
That's a huge difference from obedient. And the antonyms indocile, ungovernable, unruly, they really highlight that sense of innate resistance, right? It's core to them.
Absolutely. It's about their being, not just their response to one order. Then we have tractable.
Tractable, okay?
This describes having a character that permits easy handling or managing. The dictionary uses a really vivid example. Indian elephants are more tractable than their African cousins.
Interesting. So it's about manageability, not just for people.
Right. People, animals, even problems. A tractable problem is one you can get a handle on. It suggests ease of manipulation or guidance, often because of a flexible nature.
That flexibility seems key. A tractable problem isn't just solvable eventually. It bends to your efforts. It yields.
Exactly. It yields. It's not about submission to authority like obedient, but about being adaptable, manageable, workable.
And the opposite, intractable or unruly, those are things that just resist being managed. They won't bend.
Precisely. They refuse to be worked with.
Okay, so obedient, docile, tractable. What's the last one in this group? Amenable.
Amenable, yes. This one suggests a willingness to yield to or cooperate with advice, demands, or even contrary suggestions. The source example is he's usually amenable to suggestions and new ideas.
Ah, so this sounds more active, cooperative.
Yes, that's the key difference. Active willingness to cooperate or be influenced. It's less about passive submission or just being easygoing by nature, and more about open-mindedness, responsiveness, a willingness to engage.
That raises a really interesting point for listeners to think about. Is being amenable a strength or a weakness?
It depends entirely on context, doesn't it?
Right. Like in a fast-moving startup, someone amenable is gold. They adapt, they pivot, but maybe in a tough negotiation.
Being too amenable could signal weakness, like you don't really believe in your position.
Exactly. Context totally changes it. A virtue becomes a vulnerability. And the antonyms here, recalcitrant, refractory, they sound stubborn.
They mean stubbornly resistant to authority or control. Unwilling to be influenced.
So for everyone listening, understanding these isn't just about vocab, right? It helps you describe people, colleagues, kids, whoever more accurately.
And maybe even understand challenges better. Is this problem just difficult or truly intractable? Is this team member obeying orders, or are they amenable to collaboration?
Your word choice really shapes perception and expectation.
It's strategic understanding, not just words.
Okay, so we've looked at how people receive directions. Let's flip it slightly. What about the words for actually following those directions? It's not always just obeying, is it? We have obey, comply, and mind.
No, definitely not always the same. Obey, as we said, is the general term. Rooted in authority implies that ready, submissive yielding, like obeyed her parents. Clear power dynamic, expectation of compliance.
Got it. Straightforward antonyms. Disobey, command, order, still very clear on the power structure.
Right, but comply, usually with, adds nuance. It often implies complacence, maybe dependence, maybe even just a lack of a strong opinion yourself.
How so?
Well, the source example is willing to comply with the opinion of the majority. See how that feels different?
Yeah, it sounds less about conviction and more about going along with it. External pressure.
Exactly, or maybe just wanting to conform, or it's just easier than arguing. Less internal commitment than obey. More passive, maybe.
That makes sense. A pragmatic choice, not necessarily a heartfelt one. And the antonyms, command, enjoin, still external pressure.
Precisely. And then we have mind, which is interesting because it has a couple of different uses. It's often used for children or juniors, in warnings. Children must mind their parents. That's direct instruction.
Okay, like telling someone lower in status to pay attention and obey.
Yes. But then there's a weaker sense, maybe a bit old-fashioned now, meaning just heeding or attending to conform. Like, mind you, he never spoke to me about it.
Ah, like pay attention to this fact or note this.
Much softer.
Right. So it's the most informal and context-dependent. That dual usage, direct instruction versus just pay attention, shows how it works in different relationships.
You wouldn't tell a soldier to mind their officer like you tell a kid to mind their parents. The whole context shifts.
Absolutely. Understanding that helps you pick up on those subtle relational cues.
Okay, from following orders to, voicing disagreement. Let's switch gears completely. How do we talk about arguing against something? We've got object, protest, remonstrate, expostulate, and even kick. Quite a range. It is quite a range. Object is probably the most basic, the most straightforward. It just addresses dislike or aversion.
Like the example, objected to his sweeping generalizations. Simple disapproval.
Exactly. Often formal, a statement of opposition, but doesn't necessarily imply big action. And the antonym is acquiesce, basically giving in reluctantly.
So objecting is just stating your case. Doesn't mean you're organizing a march, which brings us to protest.
Right. Protest suggests something more orderly, often public, presented in speech or writing. Think of an open letter protesting the government's foreign policy.
Okay, so protest feels more structured, maybe more public, aiming to draw attention, make a change.
Often, yes. It implies a specific grievance, a declaration. Antonym is just agree. Now, remonstrate is more about purpose. It implies trying to persuade or convince someone, often by warning or reproving them.
Persuade how?
Like the example, remonstrated on his son's free spending ways at college. See the persuasive intent, the concern, the disapproval, trying to change behavior through reasoned argument.
Ah, okay. It feels more personal, almost like you're trying to set someone straight. More gravitas than just objecting.
Exactly. An expostulate takes that intensity up a notch. It suggests a really earnest explanation of your objection, a firm insistence on your position.
So really passionate, deep conviction.
Yes, deep conviction, determined articulation. It's like a fervent plea, making absolutely sure they understand how strongly you feel and why. You wouldn't expostulate about something trivial.
Definitely not. Okay, and the last one, kick. Sounds informal.
It is very informal. Suggests strenuous protesting or complaining, often in a less structured way. Everybody kicks when taxes are raised. It's visceral, maybe widespread dissatisfaction, but not necessarily organized.
Right, just grumbling loudly. So here's what's interesting. Choosing protest instead of kick. That changes everything, doesn't it?
Absolutely. How legitimate or formal does the objection sound?
Yeah, kicking about policy sounds like whining. Protesting, it sounds serious, planned.
Your word choice signals the weight, the seriousness, the formality.
Right.
Are you just annoyed, or are you mounting a real challenge?
Huge difference. Okay, building on that, let's move from just saying you disagree to actively confronting something. Direct opposition. We have oppose, combat, resist, withstand, and antagonize.
Right. Oppose is the umbrella term here. Super broad. Can mean anything from just objecting mildly to full-on hostility or war.
Like oppose the plan to build a nuclear power plant. Could mean voting against it, protesting, anything.
Exactly. It covers the whole spectrum. Combat then stresses the forceful, active nature of countering something, like combat the disease by educating the public.
So an active struggle, a direct fight.
Yes, meeting a challenge head-on, with energy, intent. The antonyms champion or defend show the opposite active support.
Makes sense. Combat implies engagement. What about resist?
Resist implies recognizing a hostile or threatening force and struggling against it. Struggled valiantly to resist the temptation.
Okay, so that feels more defensive, pushing back against pressure.
Often, yes. A struggle against something pressing in on you, internally or externally. Antonyms: submit, abide. You either resist or you yield.
Got it. And withstand. How's that different from resist?
Withstand suggests more passive resistance, but often successful. Think, unable to withstand peer pressure. It emphasizes resilience, endurance. Not necessarily fighting back, but holding firm, not breaking under pressure.
Absorbing the impact without crumbling. Less active fighting, more enduring.
Exactly, holding firm. Now, antagonize is the odd one out here. It means arousing resistance or hostility in someone else.
So you're causing the opposition.
Precisely. The example.
Yeah.
Statements that antagonized even his own supporters. You're provoking a reaction, making someone hostile towards you. You're not just disagreeing, you're stirring things up.
That's a critical distinction for anyone listening. It makes you think. Are you just opposing an idea, or are you actually antagonizing the person, making them dig their heels in even more?
It's the difference between a counter-argument and outright provocation.
Yeah.
And the antonym conciliate really highlights that antagonism is about creating division.
Wow. Okay, let's go even deeper now. From personal or tactical opposition to really fundamental philosophical differences. Opposite, contradictory, contrary, antithetical. Big words, big concepts.
Big concepts indeed. Opposite is the general term again. Things in sharp contrast or conflict. They held opposite views on foreign aid. Broadest term, direct contrast. Antonym, same.
Simple enough. Opposite sides, opposite opinions. What about contradictory?
Contradictory means two things that completely negate each other. Logically impossible for both to be true. If one is true, the other must be false.
Like the example, made contradictory predictions about the stock market. Only one can be right.
Exactly. It's a binary. Either no middle ground, logically speaking. Antonyms, corroboratory, confirmatory.
Okay. Then contrary, how does that differ?
Contrary implies extreme divergence, diametrical opposition, often in opinions, motives, ideas, contrary accounts of the late president's character. It suggests a strong difference in nature or direction, often leading to conflict. It's not necessarily logical impossibility like contradictory, but a fundamental clash in perspective or essence.
So contrary accounts aren't just different, they're fundamentally at odds, pulling in opposite directions.
Yes, a strong inherent opposition that makes agreement difficult. And then we get to antithetical.
The strongest one.
Seems like it. Stresses clear, unequivocal, diametrical opposition. A law that is antithetical to the basic idea of democracy. It implies an opposition of fundamental principles or essences.
So one thing completely undermines the core nature of the other.
Exactly. A deep foundational incompatibility. A clash of core tenets. It's not just disagreement, it's philosophical opposition. Understanding these helps us see beyond surface disagreements to those really profound clashes of ideas.
Definitely. Okay, let's shift gears dramatically now. We're moving away from agreement and disagreement and into how we actually process and communicate information. Or sometimes fail to.
Communication and cognition.
Yeah. This next section looks at words for clarity or lack thereof, and then how we form and hold beliefs. Navigating nuance in how we think and talk. Super important stuff today.
Absolutely critical. Let's start with intentional versus accidental obscurity. We've got a whole toolkit here. Obscure, dark, vague, enigmatic, cryptic, ambiguous, and equivocal. They all mean unclear, but the why behind the lack of clarity differs hugely.
Okay, obscure first.
Obscure implies meaning is hidden or veiled, maybe because the expression isn't quite adequate, or maybe full knowledge is withheld. The example, the poem is obscure to those unlearned in the classics.
So it's hard to understand because it's complex or you need background info, not necessarily deliberate confusion.
Often not deliberate, no. Could just be the audience isn't prepared. Antonyms, distinct, obvious. Now, dark takes a different turn.
How so?
Dark implies an imperfect revelation, but often with ominous, mysterious, even sinister overtones. Like someone who muttered dark hints of revenge.
Ooh, yeah, that adds a layer of foreboding, something unsettling.
Exactly. It's not just unclear, it's unclear in a worrying way. Antonym, lucid, clear, easy to understand.
Big difference. Okay, what about vague? We hear that a lot.
Vague implies a lack of clear definition, often because the idea itself wasn't fully thought through or maybe wasn't considered properly. Vague promises of reimbursement were made.
So imprecise. Maybe due to sloppy thinking or maybe deliberately evasive?
Could be either. It suggests an unformed thought or phrasing that avoids specifics. Antonyms, definite, specific, lucid, all about precision.
Got it. Then enigmatic. Sounds mysterious.
It stresses a puzzling, mystifying quality, often deliberately so. Left behind, enigmatic works on alchemy. It evokes deep mystery, invites interpretation. It's like a puzzle.
Meant to be puzzling, maybe, not just confusing. Antonym, explicit.
Right. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, potentially into deception.
A triptych. Cryptic. Like a secret code.
Sort of. It implies a purposely concealed meaning, often intended to perplex or challenge. A cryptic message only a spy could decode. The concealment is deliberate.
Why? To test someone. Keep secrets.
Could be. To test intelligence, ensure secrecy, maybe exclude outsiders who don't have the key. It's meant to be hard to understand unless you're in the know.
That raises a good point, though. How often do we use cryptic language without meaning to?
That's a great question. Maybe trying to sound smart, using jargon.
Yeah, and if your audience doesn't have the key, you're not being profound, you're just being confusing.
Exactly. Accidental exclusion versus a deliberate test. Huge difference.
Okay. Next is ambiguous.
Ambiguous usually points to difficulty understanding because a word or phrase has multiple meanings, and it's not clear which one is intended, usually unintentional. An ambiguous directive that can be taken either way.
So multiple interpretations possible due to word choice leads to confusion, antonym.
Explicit.
Right. And finally, equivocal. This one is all about the intent to deceive. Deliberate ambiguity.
Yes. Deliberate use of language, open to different interpretations, specifically to mislead or evade. The prisoner would give only equivocal answers. It's designed to be slippery, to avoid commitment. Duplicitous.
Wow. Not just unclear, actively misleading. Antonym. Unequivocal. Absolutely clear.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack this. From a writer being maybe unintentionally obscure to a politician being deliberately equivocal.
Yeah.
That's a huge range.
It is.
And why should we care about these differences?
Yeah.
Because they help us figure out why something is unclear, right? Is it just vague thinking, or is someone trying to be cryptic or even deceive us?
Precisely. It's about critical thinking, analyzing not just the what, but the why behind the lack of clarity. It gives you much better discernment.
Makes sense. Okay, from clarity or lack thereof to how we hold beliefs, the weight of knowledge. Let's look at opinion, view, belief, conviction, persuasion, and sentiment. How certain are we?
Good transition. Opinion is the common starting point. It implies a conclusion you've thought about, but crucially, it's still open to dispute. Each expert seemed to be of a different opinion.
So subjective, debatable, your stance, but others might disagree.
Right. It's provisional in a way. Then view. View suggests an opinion colored by your feelings. Sentiment may be biased, very assertive in stating his views.
So it's an opinion seen through a personal lens. Your unique perspective shapes it.
Exactly. Shaped by your personal experience or feelings. Now, belief implies deliberate acceptance, intellectual assent, often without needing absolute proof. A firm belief in a supreme being.
Stronger than opinion, more internal acceptance.
Yes, you've assented to it. Even if you can't prove it scientifically, it resonates deeper.
Okay, and building on that, conviction.
Conviction is a firmly, seriously held belief. Unwavering. A conviction that she was right. It highlights intensity, adherence, and importantly, conviction often drives action.
Right. You don't just think it, you're ready to act on it, stand by it. It's core.
Absolutely. That action readiness is key. Now, persuasion is fascinating. It suggests a belief grounded more in assurance from feelings, wishes, group identity, rather than purely from evidence.
How so? The example.
Was of the persuasion that Republicans were better for business. See how it links belief to a group or inclination, maybe more than just data.
Ah, yeah, it feels shaped by identity or feeling, not just cold, hard facts.
Right, which raises that big question for all of us. How much of what we call belief is actually persuasion? Are we convinced by evidence or aligning with our tribe, our feelings?
That's a really deep question. How our identity shapes what we accept as true.
It is. And finally, sentiment. This suggests a settled opinion reflective of one's feelings or values. Her feminist sentiments were well known.
So emphasizes the emotional or moral basis, rooted in values, empathy.
Often, yes, a softer, more feeling-based judgment may be linked to justice or empathy.
So understanding all these, it helps in debates, right? Someone offering a flexible opinion or a rock-solid conviction,
Right.
or maybe a persuasion tied to their identity.
Exactly. It helps you gauge the weight, the origin, the flexibility of their stance.
Okay, wow.
Allows for much smarter, maybe more empathetic communication.
Okay, quick but important detour. Oral versus verbal. People mix these up all the time.
They really do. And it matters. Oral is the narrow one. Strictly utterance, speech, delivered by word of mouth, like an oral examination.
Spoken only. Got it. An oral contract means spoken, not written. Clear.
Right. Verbal, however, is broader. Stresses the use of words generally could be spoken or written. The example, situations in which signals replace verbal communication, shows it covers both.
Ah, so if you say verbal agreement, it's actually ambiguous. Could be spoken or written.
Technically, yes. If you want to be precise about speaking, use oral. Oral agreement.
That clarity is crucial, especially in legal or business settings.
Yeah.
Avoids huge misunderstandings.
Exactly. Small word, big difference in precision and potential consequences.
Okay, great clarification. Let's shift focus again. We're moving now to concepts of time, persistence, how things endure or don't, how language captures these dimensions. We're calling it the endurance of things and ideas.
Sounds good. From how we talk to how things last. Where do we start?
Let's start with stubbornness. The many faces of it. Words for being fixed, unyielding, but with really different connotations. We have obstinate, dogged, stubborn, pertinacious, and mulish.
A colorful group. Obstinate usually implies persistence that's perverse or unreasonable. The example, a president who is resolute but never obstinate, highlights the negative side.
So unreasonable stubbornness, inflexibility for its own sake. Antonyms, pliant, pliable, easy to bend.
Right, pig-headedness maybe. Dogged, though, often shifts positive. Suggests tenacious, unwavering persistence, sometimes maybe a bit sullen. Pursued the story with dogged perseverance.
That sounds almost admirable. Grit, resilience, sticking with it despite difficulties.
Often it is seen positively. Determination.
Antonym.
Faltering, giving up.
Okay, so doggedness is usually good. What about just plain stubborn?
Stubborn implies innate sturdiness, immovability in resisting change.
Yeah.
Swallow your stubborn pride. It's the general term. Can be good, strength, or bad. Inflexibility, depending on context. Antonym, docile.
The everyday word, adaptable. Now, pertinacious. That sounds annoying.
It suggests annoying, irksome persistence. tenacity that crosses into obnoxiousness, a pertinacious salesman who wouldn't take no for an answer.
Ha! Persistence that just gets on your nerves. We've all met that salesman.
Haven't we just? The irritating quality is key. You might admire doggedness, but definitely not pertinaciousness.
Okay, and the last one, mulish. Like a mule.
Exactly like a mule, implies settled, thoroughly unreasonable obstinacy. A mulish determination to stick with the lost cause. It evokes that senseless refusal to budge, even when it's clearly harmful. Stubbornness divorced from reason.
Wow, that's pretty harsh. Almost senseless. So it makes you think, when does that admirable, dogged perseverance
Cross the line into mulish determination.
Yeah.
Senseless, self-defeating refusal to adapt.
Right. Your word choice signaled your judgment on its rationality?
Absolutely. It's not just how persistent, but why and to what end.
Okay, from stubbornness to time itself. Let's look at the words for age. How things move from new to irrelevant. We've got old, ancient, venerable, antique, antiquated, antediluvian, archaic, and obsolete.
A whole timeline in words. Old is the baseline. General, versatile,
Yeah.
applies to actual or relative length of existence. An old sweater, subjective. Antonym, new.
Simple enough. Ancient then goes way back, right? Distant past.
Yes. Occurrence, existence, survival from the distant past. Ancient accounts of dragons. Deep past, historical, mythical connotations. Antonym, modern.
Got it. Venerable. Sounds respectful.
It is. Stresses the hoariness, the dignity of great age. The family's venerable patriarch. Conveys respect, reverence due to age. Suggests wisdom, distinction.
So old and respected. Like a venerable institution. What about antique for objects?
Yes. Typically objects of value from a former time. Collected antique Chippendale furniture. Old and prized for age, craftsmanship, history. Often collected. Antonyms, modern, current.
Okay, clear category. Now, antiquated sounds negative.
It is. Implies discredited, outmoded, inappropriate for the present time. Antiquated teaching methods. The key is that negative judgment, it's not just old, it's no longer fit for purpose, fallen behind.
Definitely critical.
Yeah.
Suggests needing an update. Antonyms. Modernistic, modish, very current.
Exactly. Then antediluvian takes that outmoded idea to the extreme.
Like before the flood. Seriously old.
Yeah, suggests something so antiquated it might as well be from before Noah's Ark. Utterly, almost comically out of touch, extremely old-fashioned.
Okay, that's a fun one. Archaic.
Archaic implies having the characteristics of a much earlier time, often deliberately. The play used archaic language to convey a sense of period, often refers to language, style, evokes history, not necessarily bad, can be a conscious choice. Antonym, up-to-date.
Right, used for effect sometimes. And finally, obsolete.
Obsolete implies qualities that have gone out of use, often because something better replaced them. This nuclear missile will make all others obsolete. It's been superseded.
Ah, rendered irrelevant by progress. No longer useful because of innovation.
That's the core idea. Surpassed, displaced. So when you call something old, what do you really mean?
Is it venerable and respected? Antique and valuable? Antiquated and useless? Or obsolete and replaced?
Precision matters. It shapes how we value things, what we do with them.
Definitely. Okay, let's wrap this section with words for events. How things happen. Occurrence, event, incident, episode, and circumstance.
Right. Occurrence is the broadest, most neutral, any happening without intent or plan. A meeting that was a chance occurrence. Random, maybe unplanned.
Just happen, no big deal. But an event sounds more significant.
Usually, yes. Implies an occurrence of some importance, often with clear causes leading up to it. The sequence of events following the assassination. Events have gravity, impact, causal links.
They carry weight. Not random. What about incident? Smaller.
Generally suggests something of brief duration or relatively minor importance, often within a larger story. A blip, maybe?
Like a minor disruption. An incident during a trip, not the main event. And episode.
Episode stresses the distinctiveness, the apartness of an incident, a self-contained part of a larger story. Recounted some amusing episodes from his youth. A mini-story within a timeline.
Like a chapter in life.
Okay.
And circumstance. That feels different.
It focuses on the details surrounding an action or event. The conditions, the facts. Couldn't remember the exact circumstances. Not the what, but the how, when, where, why.
Ah, the context. And understanding the circumstances. That can change everything, can it?
Completely. It changes our interpretation, our judgment of an occurrence or event. The context gives it meaning.
Absolutely. Okay, final section. Let's bring it home by looking at offense, the painful side, and then peace and reconciliation. The dynamics of hurt and healing through language.
A powerful contrast to end on. Let's start with emotional responses to slights. The different intensities, durations of hurt or resentment, verbs like offend, outrage, affront, insult, and then the nouns for the feelings. Offense, resentment, umbrage, pique, dudgeon, huff.
Okay, offend is the general one, causing displeasure.
Yes, can be inadvertent violation of someone's sense of propriety. Hoped that my remarks had not offended her. Doesn't have to be intentional malice. Baseline displeasure.
Got it. Outrage, then, sounds much stronger.
Much stronger. Offending beyond endurance, calling forth extreme feelings, shock, anger, corruption that outrages every citizen, a profound violation, often public, demanding a strong reaction.
Definitely pushes you over the edge. Okay, affront. What's specific there?
Affront implies deliberate rudeness, contemptuous indifference to courtesy, often public. A movie that affronts your intelligence. It's that deliberate, open disrespect. Antonym, gratify.
So deliberate public disrespect. How's insult different?
Insult suggests wanton, deliberate causing of humiliation, hurt pride, shame. Manage to insult every guest at the party. Focuses on intentional, personal humiliation, aimed at self-esteem. Antonym, honor.
Okay, affront is more public dignity. Insult is more personal humiliation. Makes sense. Now the feelings. Offense, the noun.
The resulting state of hurt displeasure. Takes deep offense at racial slurs, the internal feeling.
Right. Resentment, longer lasting.
Yes, suggests longer-lasting indignation, smoldering ill will, harbored a lifelong resentment, emphasizes duration, simmering anger, bitterness, affects the future.
That slow burn. Umbrage sounds a bit formal.
It is more formal, implies feeling snubbed or ignored. Took umbrage at a lecturer who debunked American legends, feeling overlooked, disrespected, wounded pride or dignity.
Feeling slighted. Okay, pique sounds fleeting.
It is, transient feeling of wounded vanity. In a pique, she foolishly declined the invitation. Short burst of irritation, usually from hurt pride, often leads to a hasty reaction.
A flare-up. Dudgeon sounds dramatic.
Suggests an angry fit of indignation, often displayed openly. Walked out of the meeting in high dudgeon, a dramatic show of anger, often feeling righteous about it.
Making a scene, maybe. And huff, the most informal.
Most informal. Peevish, short-lived anger, usually at a petty cause. In a huff, she threw the ring in his face. Over-the-top reaction to something minor, maybe childish, usually passes quickly.
Wow. So knowing these helps describe reactions precisely. Fleeting pique, simmering resentment, righteous dudgeon helps you gauge the situation.
And maybe respond more appropriately based on the depth and nature of the feeling.
Right. Okay. From feelings to actions, acts of transgression, violating norms, rules, laws, from minor stuff to serious moral failings. Offense, sin, vice, crime, scandal.
Right. Offense, the act, is the broadest term again. Infraction of any law, rule, code. At that school, no offense went unpunished. Covers any transgression.
The umbrella term, sin, then adds moral weight.
Huge moral or religious weight. Offense against moral or religious law, or something felt to be highly reprehensible ethically. The sin of blasphemy. A matter of conscience, spiritual weight.
Goes beyond human rules. Okay. Vice, habitual.
Yes, applies to a habit or practice that degrades or corrupts. Gambling was traditionally the gentleman's vice. A habitual moral failing, a pattern that erodes character.
A pattern, not just one act. Crime, then, is purely legal.
Yes. Serious offense punishable by state law. The crime of murder. Formal, legal term. Clear consequences of the justice system.
Got it. And scandal, public dimension.
Absolutely. Offense that outrages the public conscience or damages the integrity reputation of an organization or person. The affair was a public scandal. The public impact, the reputational damage is key. Widespread condemnation.
That's fascinating. So a crime might not be a scandal if it stays secret, and a scandal might not even be a crime legally, just morally outrageous.
Exactly. Differentiating legal, moral, and reputational violations gives a much fuller picture.
Definitely. Okay, now for the positive side. Quieting the storm. Actions to de-escalate anger, resolve conflict. Pacify, appease, placate, mollify, propitiate, conciliate. How do we make peace?
Let's see. Pacify suggests smoothing, calming, quelling agitation or insurrection. A sincere apology seemed to pacify his rage, restoring calm and order. Antonym, anger.
Bringing things back to peace. Appease sounds different, though. Involves concessions.
Yes, quieting agitation or demands by making concessions. Nothing seemed to appease their appetite for territorial expansion. The key is giving in to demands. Can imply weakness or a temporary fix.
Yeah.
Antonym, exasperate.
Often has that negative feel, appeasement. Okay. Placate, changing feelings.
Just changing resentment or bitterness to goodwill. Bought flowers to placate his irate wife. Shifting the emotion from negative to positive, often with a gesture. Antonym, enrage.
Soothing hurt feelings. Mollify is similar.
Very similar. Implies softening anger or soothing hurt feelings by positive action or reassurance. A promise of a hearing mollified the demonstrators. Emphasizes a softer, gentler approach, maybe. Reassurance. Antonym, also exasperate.
Okay, placate and mollify are about soothing emotions. Propitiate sounds like dealing with power.
It implies averting anger or winning favor, especially from someone powerful, even a deity. Propitiated his mother-in-law by getting the clean-cut look. Trying to get approval. Avoid harm from power. Strategic motive, often.
Definitely managing power dynamics. Trying to get in good graces. And finally, conciliate. Bringing parties together.
Yes, perhaps the broadest for harmony. Ending estrangement by persuasion, concession, settling differences. Often mutual effort. America's efforts to conciliate. Bringing parties back together, restoring goodwill.
That raises a really practical point. When do you appease versus conciliate?
Great question. Appeasing might be tactical, giving in temporarily without solving the root cause. Conciliation aims for a deeper mutual resolution, ending the estrangement for real.
Tactical versus truly resolving. Big difference. Okay, last set. Qualities and attitudes that promote peace. Pacific, peaceable, peaceful, irenic, pacifist, pacifistic.
All right. Pacific applies to people, acts, ideas that tend to maintain peace or conciliate strife. Adopted a pacific attitude at the conference. Actively working towards peace, diplomatic. Antonym, bellicose, eager for war.
Actively seeking harmony. Peaceable, then. More about disposition.
Yes. Stresses enjoyment of peace as a way of life. Absence of aggressive intent. A peaceable gathering. A non-confrontational nature. Antonyms, contentious, acrimonious, prone to argument.
Just naturally not aggressive. And peaceful, the state itself.
Suggests the absence of strife, contention, disturbance. Peaceful solitude. The state of tranquility, calm. The condition or atmosphere.
The calm state we aim for. Irenic. That's less common.
Less common but useful. Often used regarding intellectual or religious controversy. Describes attitudes or measures likely to allay dispute, foster agreement. Issued an irenic interpretation of the canon, seeking harmony in complex disputes. Antonym, acrimonious.
Focused on resolving intellectual disputes peacefully. Cool. And pacifist, the ideology.
Yes. Stresses active opposition to war or violence, usually on moral or conscientious grounds.
Yeah.
A pacifist group on the campus. It's an active moral stance against violence. An identity. Antonym, combative.
A principled refusal of violence. And pacifistic is just the adjective for things.
Right. Close to pacifist, but usually applies to things, outlooks, not persons directly. A determinedly pacifistic outlook describes the quality or ideology itself.
So a pacifist person, a pacifistic policy. Got it. Subtle but clear.
Exactly. Both underscore that commitment to peace.
Wow, what an incredible tour through language. We've really dug into the nuances, haven't we? Mostly O and P words, but showing how each one carries its own specific weight, context, intention, emotion.
It's amazing how much is packed into each choice. From submission, is it obedient or amenable, to disagreement, to protest, or just a kick? Precision makes all the difference.
And clarity is something obscure because it's complex, or equivocal because someone's trying to mislead. And our beliefs, just an opinion or a deep conviction, or maybe a persuasion tied to identity.
And time. Is it just old or truly obsolete? And navigating offense and peace from peat to resentment, from appeasing to truly conciliating.
So the big takeaway for everyone listening, being well-informed isn't just about facts. It's about understanding the tools we use to share those facts, our words.
Absolutely.
We really hope you'll listen more closely now, read more carefully, choose your words with that extra bit of precision in meetings, emails, debates, even just casual chats.
Because if words are tools, mastering them isn't just about sounding smart. It's about building better understanding, connecting more effectively.
Or sometimes defining the differences more clearly. So here's a final thought to chew on. What insights might you be missing? What connections might you be failing to make if you're not paying close attention to that quiet, immense power hidden right there in the dictionary?